afternoon, the weekend, at the Pharmacy at Safeway Connections Conference. What an organization that's helped put this on and funded this event. I am Laura Santos. I'm your MC for this afternoon for your last session. And now we've had another sugar loaf and cookies. Get to hear from a dietitian. She has also, she'll tell you that it's okay to have the cookie part. I guarantee you that. Remember, on your way out the door, make sure that it wasn't your blue ticket half that was drawn to the door prize. The ticket's been drawn and it's been posted, so just make sure you've got your little...
She's going to get claimed.
Who claimed? Someone claimed it?
Yeah.
Someone in here? Oh, so it's been claimed, all right. And then, and as you're going out the door, on your way out to registration, you can take your name badge that you've got and drop it off at registration, or there might even be some staff here at the door just collecting your tickets as your name badges as you're going out the door. Your evaluation forms, please. Thank you. We use those evaluation forms to plan the next conference, and these evaluation forms will be going on to Edmonton to help them plan their next education session, which is coming up this time next year. If you're still hungry and you want a box lunch, there are box lunches that have been refrigerated since lunch, and they will be available. So there's the box lunches, there's fruit, there's cookies yet to go. So don't leave empty-handed. Go get your dinner if you're going out the door here from some of the lunch. Sarah McKenna is our speaker tonight, this afternoon. Feels like this evening. Feels like 8 o'clock at night right now. It's only 3:30, whatever. She took her passion for food and she actually turned it into a business. Her business is called Food for Thought Nutrition. And she took that concept and now has a presentation about how to eat healthy on a budget. Please welcome Sarah McKenna with your last ed session of the day. Sarah.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. If you need, the presentation should be about 35 or 40 minutes unless I get really excited and go off on a tangent. If you need to leave before the question session to catch a bus, but you do have a question for me, please feel free to email me. My contact information is in the handout package on, I believe, the very last slide. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have by email. So my presentation is called Healthy Eating on a Budget, and challenging what that means. I'm very passionate about nourishing your body, but also about taking care of how you feel as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about what does healthy mean, because everybody thinks they know what healthy means, but we all have different definitions. So, conventional wisdom, healthy is boring, flavorless, and expensive. And celery is my least favorite food, which is why there's a picture of it up there. Some people love celery, not me. So in reality, healthy can mean many different things when it comes to food. So that's a lemon blueberry cupcake that I made. It was very tasty. So when we look at eating in a healthy way, we need to look at both what we are eating, what we're not eating, and how we eat. So how to eat is something that I've only recently started focusing on in my practice. I've always done it with children. I follow the principles of a dietitian called Ellen Satter, who really focuses on teaching children how to become competent eaters. And in my position, when I worked at the Alberta Children's Hospital, I did focus on children with special needs and teaching them how to become competent eaters. But really, as I work more and more with adults, a lot of us have lost touch with our appetite and how to eat and how to listen to our bodies. So getting rid of guilt, practicing mindful eating, which you hear a lot about these days I'm finding, making meals enjoyable, and listen to what your body is telling you. So starting with guilt, and I tell this to all my clients, that guilt is a useless emotion when it comes to food. It doesn't benefit us at all to feel guilty about what we eat. If we eat something, we should either eat it and really enjoy it, or not eat it. There's no point in eating something and then feeling bad about eating it later. It's done, it's over, you just have to move on. I talk a lot about this when it comes to things like birthday cakes at offices. People always talk about that. You have all these intentions, you go to the office, there's a birthday cake at the office, and people agonize over whether they should partake in that. So I say, take the piece of cake if you want to eat the piece of cake, sit down and really pay attention to it. If it's delicious, then enjoy every last mouthful. If you find halfway through it's really not that great, then throw it in the garbage. Don't waste it. And waste it, I mean putting it in your body when you don't want it. One of my friend's moms said that. It's a waste if you eat something and you don't like it. That's true. It's less wasteful than, like, throwing it out would be much better. So our society has a terrible attitude towards food, and I don't know if it's getting worse or if I'm just more sensitive to it as I'm raising small children now. I read all these messages about, if you eat these things, it will kill you, and if you don't eat this, it will kill you, and this focus on things that are bad, and then superfoods. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for any of us. There's no one bad food other than things that are poisonous, and then you definitely should not eat those things. Superfood is kind of a meaningless term. People can call anything a superfood, but there's always a new trendy superfood that people are trying to get us to buy. And most of them don't really have any research showing that if you eat this exclusively, like the purveyors are trying to tell us we should, that it's going to benefit us at all. I do love chia seeds, though, if anyone knows about that Aztec superfood. They are delightful. Chia seeds, they're called. Yeah, they're so great. Mindful eating. So mindful eating is eating with complete awareness rather than distracted eating. I was going to put in a little blurb about how to become a mindful eater, but it was really long, so I thought maybe we'll just leave it. So when people talk about distracted eating, they say, well, I know what I'm eating, I'm sitting there and eating it, but a lot of us, and I do this as well, eat while I'm surfing the internet, or sometimes watching television, or listening, or half the time I'm eating, but I'm focusing on 3 different people, and they're spilling milk here, and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and it's hard to focus on what you're eating. We eat more when we're watching TV or movies or surfing the internet, and there's lots of studies to show that when you give people popcorn, for example, at a movie, they don't pay attention to it, and they eat more than they would have if they were just sitting there and eating. That's not to say that eating shouldn't be enjoyable, and I think you have to try to balance. Like if you live alone and you're eating most of your meals and snacks alone, it's not going to be very enjoyable to just sit there. So you might want to have a little bit of music on, or chew your food multiple times to make sure that you're paying attention to that, or stopping and checking in with yourself every so often. If you are watching TV, how do I feel right now? Do I feel close to 100% full? Do I feel 50% full? Where am I feeling? So that you can still have an enjoyable eating experience even if you're watching. And then our body tells us how much we need to eat. We just need to pay attention to hear that. And a lot of us have lost touch with that over the years, and we don't listen to our bodies. Sometimes we have to retrain our bodies. I used to work with eating disorder patients, and I don't do meal plans for weight loss, but eating disorder patients in their recovery process, sometimes they did have to have meal plans because their body was not telling them the truth. Their body was telling them that they needed to eat much less. But for the most part, our body does tell us how much we need to eat. And kids are very good at that. I don't know if you ever spend time with small children eating. Sometimes they will ask me, they've eaten 2 pieces of toast, they eat another piece of toast, I make them the 3rd piece, they take 1 bite, and then they're, okay, I'm full. Really? You couldn't have just stuck with the 2 pieces? You needed that extra bite to make you 100% full. But that's what they do, kids are good at it. So Marion Nessel is a researcher and dietitian in the United States. I follow her on Twitter, she's lovely. All natural, unprocessed foods have a mix of nutrients, and the best approach is to eat a lot of different kinds of relatively unprocessed foods that together provide the nutrients and other components of food that promote health. She's not a fan of superfoods either. Or eat food, mostly plants, says Michael Pollan, who is a journalist who wrote about food. And that is the fundamental base of my philosophy regarding food. Eat food. Mostly plants. We're moving into what to eat. Am I talking too fast? Let me know if I talk too fast. I get kind of excited. So this is the Harvard School of Public Health. They do a lot of nutrition research. They have the Harvard Health Nurses Study where they've been looking at nurses since, I think it's 1975 now. They've been following groups of women. They also do research on men. And they've come up with some, this is based on the American system, rather than Canada's food guide, the American system has a healthy eating plate and a food pyramid, and I'm going to show you the Harvard Health Food Pyramid next. But this is talking about what to eat, basically. And Walter Willett, who is the head of the Harvard School of Public Health, is also very excited about nutrition, but really feels passionately about evidence-based. And that's a lot of how I promote how we, or how I focus on how to eat as well. Things that have evidence behind them. There's nothing wrong with Canada's food guide, but I find a lot of the food guides are missing the other foods categories. So things, this has heart healthy fats, which is great, but other foods are a part of life. So things like less nutrient-dense foods, we could call them. At our house, we don't talk about healthy foods and unhealthy foods. We talk about foods that have a lot of nutrition and foods that just have a little bit of nutrition. So we focus on eating more of the foods that have lots, but we still are quite happy to eat the foods that just have a little bit. So the healthy eating plate, I'm just going to move away to point, but you can see it pretty well, the healthy oils on the side. I think the pendulum has swung even from 10 or 15 years ago when all fat was bad fat. I think most people are realizing now that not all fat is bad fat. In fact, all kinds of fat have a place in our diet, and it's just a question of the proportions. Olive and canola oils for cooking and on salad at the table. He says limit butter and avoiding trans fat. Does anyone know why you might avoid trans fat? Sorry?
Your heart and your arteries.
Yes, and it's a type of fat that was sort of invented to make food more shelf-stable, and our bodies just don't really know what to do with it. And that's why we only discovered that when they decided that saturated fat was the most evil substance on the face of the earth, and they had to get rid of all the saturated fat. So then food companies were left with trying to figure out what to do to keep their food shelf-stable. Trans fats came into play, then we discovered, oh, they're even worse. So, you can avoid trans fat by avoiding a lot of processed foods, or looking, when you do have processed foods, looking for the ones that say no trans fat. They can still have trans fat in them if they say no trans fat, it just has to be a very, very small amount. So then we have vegetables. The greater the variety, the better. We all know that. Walter Willett doesn't think potatoes and french fries count. I don't know about that. Eat plenty of fruits of all colors. Whole grains, and then he's got brown rice, whole wheat bread, and whole grain pasta, and limiting refined grains. I have celiac disease, so when I got diagnosed with that, I had to discover a whole world beyond wheat. And people with multiple sclerosis, as probably most of you know, are at a higher risk of developing celiac disease because you have one autoimmune disease already, and then, oh yeah, you might get another one. It's not that bad though. But yeah, it did lead me to discover all kinds of grains beyond wheat, quinoa. I don't really like millet because it's kind of like eating birdseed, but some people swear by it. Expanding our palate. When we evolved as a species, when you think about hunting and gathering, people ate, I forget what it was, something like thousands of plants. Thousands of different varieties of plants because you had to move seasonally around and eat. And when I think about our diet, we're definitely not eating thousands of plants. That's just not how we eat anymore. But we can try to expand our palate as much as possible and increase the variety as much as possible. Healthy protein, so choosing fish, poultry, beans, and nuts, and then limiting red meat. He says to avoid bacon, but who could do that? Cold cuts and other processed meats. And then water. Drink water, coffee or tea with little or no sugar. Milk, 1 to 2 servings a day, and juice, 1 small glass a day. Avoid sugary drinks. And this one doesn't have it on it, but I think it might be on the food pyramid. It says something like alcohol for most people.
Alcohol for most people?
Yeah, just because this is based on research, and a lot of research shows, right, that 1 glass of red wine a day or 1 glass of beer a day is not, it was just, I don't know, I think they've changed the wording, but it was just kind of funny. I'm like, okay, I don't know if we want to start saying just a blanket statement like that. But there's up here, okay, optional, alcohol in moderation, not for everyone. There we go, that's better. So they do recommend a daily multivitamin plus extra vitamin D. Probably a lot of you already take vitamin D on the recommendation of your doctor. There's some interesting research coming out about vitamin D and inflammation. And there's a lot of stuff coming out about inflammation in the body in general. And our diet can be a way to fight inflammation, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. This is one of those tangents I was referring to earlier. But anyway, vitamin D, they're showing, even now my son has asthma, and they're recommending that I give him quite a bit more vitamin D because there's better asthma control when you have more vitamin D. I don't have the reference for that, I just took the doctor's word for it, but...
How much vitamin D do they want him to take?
They said 400 to 800 plus whatever he gets in his diet, so not mega doses. And I myself am not comfortable prescribing mega doses just because I don't see a lot of research behind it. I think there's doctors out there that in their own practice prescribe mega doses, but they also monitor vitamin D levels, so it's a lot easier for them to know that it's going to be safe and that they're going to catch it quickly. I don't have that authority to order vitamin D levels, so I can't say. I stick with the tolerable upper limit, which changes all the time as we start giving people higher and higher doses. They're saying, oh, really, if you give 5,000 a day, it's not so bad. Okay, let's up this to 10,000 and see what happens. But even for people who don't have diseases with inflammatory processes or autoimmune diseases, they're saying extra vitamin D for everyone. I went to a presentation on vitamin D, and she said the conclusion of the presentation was that the supplementing with 400 international units was good enough for most people. So that was based on the available research. Yes.
As people with MS, we're told to take 4,000.
Yeah. So that's something that a lot of doctors could do. I myself wouldn't probably recommend that to people, but I think that's safe for most people, even if they took 4,000. So the bottom of this pyramid is daily exercise and weight control, and this is, you'll notice it does not say weight loss, and it's more about weight stability. There's a lot of research showing that when your weight goes up and down, it's very, very hard on your body. It might actually be better for your body just to find a stable point and stay there, even if that weight is 50 pounds higher than you might like it to be. Daily exercise, and of course it's going to be dependent on your mobility at that time. There isn't evidence showing that everyone needs to run a marathon to benefit from exercise. It can be 10 minutes a day. There's a really great video on YouTube by Dr. Mike Evans, and it's called, what is it called? 23 and a half hours. And he goes through, it's 9 minutes long, it's really great, it's all little drawings, but he goes through all the evidence for exercise, but it's not intensive exercise. It's a lot of light exercise, getting that heart rate up just a little bit for 10 minutes, 3 times a day can be as great a benefit as more intensive exercise.
And what's it called?
I think it's called 23 and a half hours, but his name is Mike Evans, Dr. Mike Evans. He's a medical professor. So that's the basis of the food pyramid. Then you've got your vegetables and fruits, your healthy fats and oils, your whole grains, nuts, seeds, beans, and tofu, and then fish, poultry, and eggs, and then dairy. And this is 1 to 2 servings a day, and this is going to depend too on if you're taking medications that interfere with calcium absorption, if you're taking steroids, anything like that, you're going to need more calcium than that. This is just basic every day. And then at the very top, he's got your use sparingly stuff. But all of this plays back into what I said earlier. We have to enjoy our food. So this might be a way to think of the pattern of eating that you're aiming for. This isn't a daily thing. When you are eating daily, you have to think about what you feel like eating right that day. And it's not going to look like that necessarily. And then decreasing the food budget. So starting with groceries, there's always money versus time is energy. Or as this yoga teacher I had once, who said money is energy. And you usually can't save both. So if you look at the list, like comparison shopping, often is taking time and energy. You might save money, but you might not. Same with tracking prices. I find my biggest money saver is making a meal plan and shopping list and trying to stick to that as much as possible, because that helps me to avoid the last thing, which is food wastage. There's research showing that people throw up to 25% of the food that they buy because it's spoiled or gone bad. That's a huge amount of money every year. So trying to stick with a meal plan and shopping list, or thinking about what am I likely to eat in a week, can be very helpful. I think it's sometimes harder when you're buying for a family to do that. You're not. When it was just the two of us, I was able, by the end of the week, our fridge was totally empty, and there was nothing left, because I could plan for it accordingly. With 3 children, their appetites are quite variable, so I don't have that down to a fine art anymore. I generally stick with one grocery store where I know the prices are lower than like the one in my neighborhood that seems to be the most expensive grocery store in Canada.
Safeway.
Yes, in Garrison Woods. I've read that somewhere. I don't know if it's for sure true. I do know that the month that we shopped there, our grocery bill was almost double what it normally was, so take that for what it is. Safeway is lovely, though, in supporting the conference, so we won't bash Safeway.
Safeway Pharmacy.
Yes. But I do stick with that, and I mean, you can do things like Costco. Sometimes membership. I bought a membership a couple of years ago. I personally haven't found it benefited me that much. Some people might have a different opinion. It might work for you better. There's things you can do like that. But yeah, you always have to think about money versus time and energy. I don't know why we don't have an online grocery store that delivers in Calgary.
We do.
Do we?
Yeah.
Which one?
There's spud.ca.
Spud, yes.
They're
Spud.
expensive.
They are, and organic. Everything's
Yeah.
organic, which is okay if you're looking for that, but I am a bit cheap.
Safeway used to do it.
They used to, and Co-op used to too, but they don't anymore.
Yeah.
I used to work at a Family Foods, and they had, like, there was a website that you could go on, and they would come and they'd do all your groceries and bring them to you. I remember.
Well, that's what everyone should do.
Yeah.
When I lived in Montreal, you could go to the grocery store and pick out all your food, and then they would deliver it to you, which was nice, because no one had a car, so you drag all your stuff. You could not drag it all home. Up a hill, it always seemed to be up a hill. But yeah, I don't know why we don't have that option in Calgary. It would certainly make it a lot easier to price compare too, because if everybody delivered, you could look at everybody's prices online and then just pick and choose from the ones that you wanted. Maybe that's why they don't do it. But yes, spud.ca. And if anyone's buying gluten-free foods, there is the gluten-free general store, and that is an online ordering, and they do deliver to your house. It's for $3.50, but it's a flat rate for the delivery, and it's, pardon?
I said that's cool.
Yeah, it is really great. And they just started doing frozen stuff. It used to just be dried goods, but you can check it out and see, because, I mean, it might be worth it even if you don't follow a gluten-free diet. And then decreasing the food budget, Meatless Mondays. This is Paul McCartney's movement. So aiming for legume-based dishes, which will be the cheapest ones, of course, rather than dairy-based. I read an article recently, and the title was, what was it? Meat consumption dropping. Is Meatless Monday to blame? I was like, or it's all the recalls. Just a thought. Apparently meat consumption in the United States has dropped. It probably has a lot to do with recession. People have less money, they eat less meat. But I used to be a vegetarian before I got celiac disease, and then it was just too much. But we do eat meatless dishes probably 3 to 4 nights a week, just because it is so much less expensive. Freezers, I looked for data. As you can tell, I'm big on research and evidence. And it's hard to find data on whether it actually saves money. Some studies say yes it does, some doesn't. You can buy large quantities when things are on sale and freeze to extend the shelf life, as long as you don't forget that they're in there. Or have a power outage, or your 1-year-old unplugs the freezer. That's okay, that doesn't happen to everyone. And then gardening. Again, this is going to be more difficult with limited mobility. However, there are some interesting books, and there's one I saw at the Children's Hospital, actually, when I was there. They had a little display, and it was called gardening for people with physical disabilities, and it was just a whole book on how you could maximize your ability to garden with physical limitations. But the American National Gardening Association did a study showing the average family spent $70 on seeds and grew $600 worth of vegetables. No vitamins are lost in transit because you can just transfer right from your house into your bowl, or your garden into your bowl. And then composting versus fertilizer. Again, this comes down to money versus energy as well. If you're composting, that's going to take some energy. I try to compost. I can never get it. And then my husband decided we're going to do worm composting, which is inside the house.
Ew.
I know, but then you have to freeze all the compost so that the worms don't die. And then there's bugs. I'm like, get these worms out of the house. We're not doing worm composting anymore.
Well, no, you can't have them outside in the wintertime.
Well, I know, they'll freeze, so they had to be in the basement, and then they have their little larvae and their little, I don't know.
It's weird.
Yeah, no more worm composting. And then container gardens can provide produce without the digging and weeding of a large garden. And we have just 3 tomato plants, and for about a month and a half, I think I'm bringing in a pound of tomatoes every couple days. And 3 tomato plants don't take up that very much room, because I have a small house and a very small back deck. Same with lettuce. You can grow lettuce in a container, and you can grow it all year if you have a south-facing window. And lettuce is one of those ones that has high pesticide residues normally, so if you grow it at your house, you don't have to use any pesticides. And herbs are the same. You can grow herbs all year. I've never been successful. I have a bit of a black thumb. My husband does most of the gardening. I just like to harvest things. So it can help decrease the food budget, especially if you grow foods that you really like. We tend to grow things that we don't know if we really like, and then we have a lot of it. A lot. If you want a green that grows really well in Calgary, collard greens, they just will not go away. I have harvested twice and cooked it all down and frozen it, and then they just keep coming back. So if you like collard greens, they're nice in casseroles and things. They grow very well, and you do not need to weed.
No?
No, because they take up all the room and all the nutrients, and nothing else likes them. So even the slugs don't really eat them. Anyway, I'm not sure why they haven't taken off here. Okay, and then I went a bit faster than I thought. Good nutrition info. So intuitive eating is it's a book. It's written by 2 dietitians, but they also have a website. And it basically, if you are someone who has had a history of yo-yo dieting and is looking to change that, is looking to learn a new way of eating, and intuitive eating is the process that you can follow. I'm going to start a certification course shortly where I can get certified in the method, because I've read a lot about it and I've applied it to myself, but now I'm not sure how to transfer that over. But the certification course could teach you. Harvard School of Public Health has lots of nutrition info. Dietitians of Canada is the same, and then my website is at the bottom, which is foodforthoughtnutrition.ca. And I don't have a lot of nutrition info on my website. What I mostly have is recipes with my children's verdict on what they thought of what I made. And there are often word-for-word reviews of what they've said. Like, I don't like the way it tastes in my mouth, which is the most recent one. If you would like to contact me, I have the email there, my cell phone. I have a Facebook page where I post links to my blog posts, but also any interesting articles I read about nutrition or anything that I think is really exercise too, not just nutrition. And then Twitter at HowNutritious. How is my maiden name, and it is one of my biggest regrets that I did not think of this before I changed my name to McKenna. Because then I could have called my business How Nutritious. But I'm not very exciting on Twitter, I'll just warn you right now.
Okay.
And that's it, I think. Does anyone have questions? Yes.
What was the name of the celiac online general?
Oh, glutenfreegeneralstore.ca.
And what type of stuff do they sell? Is it just gluten-free stuff, or do they sell?
It is gluten-free and any allergies. So if you have allergies to things, it's a good resource, because she does lots. She has different sections too, where there's like a dairy-free section, and she has all her dairy-free products there, or egg-free, anything like that. And she delivers to the whole city, Airdrie, Okotoks, and possibly Cochrane. I'm not sure about that. Yes,
Glutenfreegeneralstore.ca.
CA.
There's also a gluten-free store next to the Sunridge Spectrum down, if you're up in the northeast.
There's lots.
There's lots of them.
Yeah.
Somebody sells bottled water, which is also in that store, but it's right beside the Sunridge Theater.
Yeah, there's lots of stores. The only reason I really recommend her over anything else is just because of the delivery, and a lot of you that probably might be helpful. For me, it's helpful not because of my mobility, but I always have my 3 little friends coming with me wherever I go. So they make it more difficult to grocery shop. Yes, at the back.
Why is it that organically grown food and everything is so much more expensive than the other places?
As far as I can tell, it's partly the scale, because they're grown on a smaller scale, so they just don't have that sort of volume decreases. And then I think I don't know exactly why it's more expensive, because you'd think that the chemicals that they spray would be expensive, but I think a lot of it comes down to scale and
It's also
Yeah.
waste because they end up having to throw out more stuff because
Yes.
it gets ruined
because it goes bad
by
faster and
pests,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
You also have to, land has to be 5 years old without pesticides in it.
We started eating organic strawberries when we lived in California for 18 months, and we saw the men out, they could have been women, I suppose, I shouldn't be sexist. The people out in the full like hazmat gear spraying the fields, and then the next day we saw all the migrant workers picking the strawberries, like no protective gear, nothing. Like, if it's that toxic when you spray it, I don't know if I want to eat it. But I don't know, I'm not an expert on organic food. There's a lot of research too saying it's not more nutritious. I don't know. I think that it's hard to say. I just try to avoid the dirty dozen myself, and those are the ones that are if you Google dirty dozen food, because I don't know what will come up, just Google dirty dozen, maybe stick with dirty dozen food, you can find a lot of lists that have the 12 most contaminated foods. And then sometimes you can look at the clean 15, which are foods that have almost no pesticide residue, so you don't have to worry about buying those ones organic as much. Yes. Oh, sorry. You and then you at the back.
Have you ever heard anything about the foods that are sprayed with MSG?
No.
That it's harder on your system?
I mean, the MSG is often an ingredient in things, and I know some people find they get headaches and stuff like that after they eat it, but I don't know if I've never looked into it, so I don't know if there's a lot of research about it.
Or majorly sick?
Mm-hmm. I know, I just mentioned headaches because I have a friend who gets a headache, but yeah, some people get sick from it. And then at the back.
But I wanted to know about, like I read, or no, I heard on the news something about washing your fruits that come from the other countries.
Sorry.
Washing your fruits.
Washing your fruits what?
From the other countries in the mild bleach,
How do you wash your fruit, vegetables from other countries?
sickness and stuff. Is that
Well,
true or what?
because their food labeling might not, their harvesting procedures might not be as strict as ours. I certainly wash everything. I don't wash it in bleach though, but I can see why. Again, when we lived in California, I lived in the area that is the salad bowl of America, it's called. It sounds so nice. But I can see why you have spinach contaminated with E. coli, because when you're getting paid by the amount that you pick, and the porta potty is a mile away, you're not going to stop picking to go to walk a mile to the porta potty and then walk a mile back, right? You might just go somewhere and find some privacy in the field and use the bathroom. And it's not that, I never saw anyone doing that, but I do know when you are very, very poor and it's going to significantly impact your income to stop and go, that might be why our vegetables get contaminated with E. coli. We do have country of origin laws here, which is nice, which all food packages are labeled with where they came from. If you feel concerned, you could certainly wash everything. I don't wash things that I'm going, I know some people who wash the outside of melons and stuff in a bleach solution because you don't eat that. that part of the melon, but when you cut the melon, you're potentially contaminating it with the bacteria on the outside. I admit to that, I don't do that, but I do know people who do. So it wouldn't be crazy to do that, especially if it's a food coming from outside of Canada where you are concerned about how it was harvested or how it was stored, right? We don't know where the food is stored before it comes to us. We don't know how long it was stored before it comes to us. Any other questions? We got lots of time. Yes?
Chia seeds, are they the same ones that they put on chia pets?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. So you could do that at home as well as enjoying
And
their
harvest-
nutrition-filled goodness.
Harvest the crop?
Yeah.
Can you eat that chia grass?
I don't know. Probably.
Well, if you can eat the seeds, you.
I assume you could. I don't know how tasty it would
I
be.
wonder if it's good salad.
I've always wondered about carrot greens too. That's a lot of greenery at the top of a carrot.
No way.
I know.
It's bitter.
They're not very good. I tried it. I tried to get my kids to eat them to see what they thought too. They said no, thank you.
Yeah, you really have to watch what you're eating, because I had somebody ask me one time, they had rhubarb growing in their yard, and she wanted to know if you could eat the leaves, and you can't, because those are poisonous.
Yes, it is a very strong laxative. Let's all be careful. Don't eat the leaves.
That's funny.
Any other questions? Oh, I think we can go. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things about diet and food safety and food preparation, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming on out to our conference. Thank
No
you.
problem.